Good evening, everybody. Welcome. We are live from Books and Books here in Coral Gables. On behalf of everyone here at Books and Books, we welcome you. Take a moment to pick up one of our Books and Books newsletters. It's on the counter tonight where you'll find your copy of The Three Promises. This will give you a breakdown of all the wonderful events we have at Books and Books every night of the week. We do about 60 every month. There's usually something for everyone's taste. We have kids events, we have Spanish events, poetry readings, first-time authors, and even celebrity signings. There are also now many of them being live streamed through the internet, as you can see by the cameras that are pointed at the author here and the store for the Q&A portion. And just for the benefit of the people that may be watching on the internet, if you have any friends or relatives watching, I don't want a repeat of what happened last night. So just make sure you're sitting next to who you're supposed to be sitting next to. I also remind you that flash photography interferes with the live streaming, so if you could refrain from doing that, I appreciate it. Again, I encourage you to visit our site. You can give us your email address. That way we can alert you to everything that goes on here at the store. And if you are watching online, you can always call the store at the number on your screen for a signed copy of the book, which we can send to you for no charge for the shipping anywhere in the United States. And you can also call and ask a question of the author while the event is in progress. But tonight we're very happy to have with us David J. Pollay and The Three Promises. In his blockbuster book, The Law of the Garbage Truck, David showed how to deflect the negativity that derails our goals and leaves us stressed and miserable. Now, in this inspiring follow-up, The Three Promises, Find Joy Every Day, Do What You Love, Make a Difference, Pollay explains how making three simple promises to yourself to find joy every day, do what you love, and make a difference can radically enhance every aspect of your life. Illustrating his points through memorable personal stories, Pollay makes it simple to practice transformative strategies that help us achieve fulfillment. Mr. Pollay is a leader in the science of positive psychology. He has spoken to audiences around the world. He was a featured TEDx speaker. He served as the co-founding associate executive director of the International Positive Psychology Association. He's been featured on ABC, NPR, Univision, and in Business Week, among many others, including the South Florida Sun-Sentinel. He holds a master's degree of applied positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania and a bachelor's degree in economics from Yale University. He's held leadership positions at Yahoo and MasterCard, and his work is backed by CEOs, Hall of Fame athletes, Las Vegas entertainers, and the world's top psychologists. Please give a nice warm welcome to Mr. David J. Pollay.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Great to see everyone this evening. Thanks for coming out. Isn't Books and Books just a wonderful store? Yes. Yeah, give it a round of applause, right? This is the only way to read and sit and take in the classics and the new books and meet with friends, and this is just, you just get that special feeling when you come into this store. So it's great to be here, and it was nice to have met most of you before we started. I thought tonight we'd sort of have a casual conversation about the Three Promises, and I want to share with you a couple things I'll read to you specifically from the book that I'm particularly fond of. But I thought I'd just start off with a question. And just for fun, just to play along and ask you if you'd play a game of fill in the blank with me. Will you play a game of fill in the blank with me? Sure. All right. This is a question that if I ask you, I'm going to give you a sentence, and there's one word that's missing, and I want you to fill it in. And this is what parents usually say about their children, and it goes something like this. I just want my kids to be happy, successful. Fulfilled. Now, fulfilled, you're speaking my language for sure. Typically, the answer is happy. I just want my children to be happy. And but I will say, the other day I was speaking to an organization, and when I said I just want my kids to be, someone yelled out in the front row, I just want my kids to be quiet. I got a kick out of that myself, because how many of you are parents or have relatives that are young? Of course, there are moments in time where you want them to be quiet. But the answer that typically is given is, I just want my kids to be happy. Now, that seems like a good idea, and I have two little girls, 11 and 12, so I, of course, would like them to be happy too. But it concerns me, the answer concerns me about wanting children to be happy, and I'll tell you why. Because of three particular statistics. The first statistic is that the rate of depression today, these days, the rates of depression today are 10 times greater than they were in the 1960s. So I'm 49 years old, I was born in 1965. The rates of depression are 10 times greater than they were in the 1960s. So that's the first statistic. The second statistic that concerns me is that when you ask people what they love to do at work and ask them, do they get a chance to do it, 20% of the workforce says that they get to do what they do best every day. Just 20%. So 80% are dissatisfied with the work that they're doing. So that's the second statistic. The third statistic is a certain amalgam of a number of statistics that say that on average, most adults don't feel, a significant majority of adults don't feel that they make a difference every day, a significant difference every day. So when I look at those statistics, the first statistic being the depression rates are greater, the second statistic that people are dissatisfied in their jobs, third, people don't feel that they're making a difference, that concerns me because it's really telling a sad story. And what's that story? The story is that the people are getting more and more accustomed to feeling as though they don't have joy in their life, that circumstances are just too overwhelming, the economy is difficult, people's health could be an issue, money might be an issue, all these different reasons, relationships, that people just say, you know, it's hard for me to feel joy on a daily basis. So when we say that the depression rates are up as high as they are, then that's a concerning. So that tells a sad story. It also tells a sad story when people start to get accustomed to the idea that they might not actually be able to have a job that they do what they love, that they don't get a chance to really express their natural strengths or their natural gifts. And so that's concerning to me. And lastly, when people start getting resigned to the fact that they might not make a difference or believe that they make a difference in the world, that's a sort of sad story. So I share that because then the question then is, but then what do we do? If all of these trends are going the wrong direction, what do we do? So I'm going to offer a sort of radical solution to begin with, especially coming from someone who researches and talks about happiness, as I do. I'm going to say, stop trying to be happy. Stop trying to be happy. Now, I have nothing against happiness. In fact, I think happiness is a great thing because we know from the research that happy people, the happier we are, the better we do in our work, the happier we are, the better relationships we have, the more resilient we are to adversity, the better our health is, the longer that we live. So happiness is a good thing, but the key is happiness comes as a result of actions. So happiness comes as a result of actions. So then the question then comes, well, what actions lead to our happiness? And what I've discovered is that there's a formula for happiness and success in life, and it's boiled down in this way. Create fulfillment, we were talking about it in the beginning, create fulfillment on a daily basis, and navigate negativity, navigate those negative situations in life. That leads to happiness and success. So creating fulfillment is what the three promises is about, is how do you create fulfillment on a daily basis. What I found through my work with people from all around the world in more than 100 countries, that there are three promises that you can make on a daily basis, fulfill them, and as a result get that feeling of fulfillment, which then has a trailing indicator of success, which is happiness trailing. So the three promises, what are the three promises? The first one is find joy. And what do I mean by that? I don't mean necessarily clicking your heels all day long and singing the whole time and whistling and slapping everyone on your back and on their back. I think that's great if you can do that, if that's part of what you do. I think that's awesome. But what I'm talking about is finding 10 minutes, 15 minutes of authentic joy in your life, where it might be what you do first thing in the morning with your family or with your dogs or with your coffee or with your exercise, but consciously making a choice to find joy in your experience every day. For 15 minutes is really what I'm talking about and what I talk about in the book. More, the merrier, but at least that. Does that make sense? So we're talking about finding joy and then giving yourself credit for that joy. Oftentimes we will find that people will not recognize at the end of the day, they'll think, my day just blew by. And they won't necessarily go back and take stock of the fact that, yeah, actually they had joy at certain points in the day, and that where they can really say at the end, take what I call psychic credit, where you go, hey, I had joy. So that's the first promise. Yes?
You can look for joy, but that doesn't mean that you find it. Finding and looking is two different things. Hopefully when you look for it, you'll find it.
Yes.
But many times you look for love and you don't find it.
Right. Yes. especially the love. That could be an interesting conversation right
Some
there.
people spend their lifetime and they're still looking.
Yeah, that's true. And this is what the book is laid out to answer that question, in that what we want to be able to do is identify, and I help through, there are 65 strategies in the book that help people find their joy. What are those things that authentically make you feel joyful? Not what I tell you should make you feel joyful, but that you authentically feel make you joyful. And that's a really good point. And the second promise is do what you love. And I'm not claiming that the key to happiness is having a job that 100% of the day you're doing just what you love, that there's no downtime where things aren't going great, or that everything is perfect. But what I'm speaking about is having a portion of your day where you're using your natural gifts or your strengths, doing something that you love to do in your job. Because all of our jobs have some component that isn't necessarily pleasurable just because we have to get certain things done. It might be administrative or could be of that nature. But at the end of the day, we want to be able to find at least something that creates an opportunity for us to do what we love for a portion of the day. Does that make sense? And where there are a lot of people who will say, my job is just, it doesn't allow me to do anything that I like. And so will find themselves painting themselves in a corner that says, I can't find any opportunity to do what I love. And what I do in the second promise in the book is walk people through a process that takes you to finding an opportunity to do more of what you love on a daily basis. So that's the second promise. And the third promise is making a difference. And what I mean there is, yeah, it's great if you can take a year off to go to another country and volunteer, or take a week off or 2 weeks. But what I'm really talking about is consciously finding a way to make a difference in someone else's life every single day, and recognizing those opportunities to consciously make a difference in someone else's life. And so there are many, many opportunities, and that's what I cover in the book as well, in the third promise. Where are all those opportunities that we might not normally see, and I help bring that to light. Does that make sense? So find joy, do what you love, make a difference, are those three promises. Now, what I wanted to do is share with you a couple stories from the book that might be, that I particularly find interesting. And here's one of those rituals that might connect. This is from chapter 3, and I call it a daily dose of awe meditation and gratitude prayer. And this is to help with the first promise, find joy. This is one ritual that can change your life. For much of the past 20 years, I have begun each day with the same positive ritual, a dose of what I call awe meditation and gratitude prayer. No matter where I am, I start the day with awe meditation. After I wake up, I head for the nearest window, open the curtain, and look outside. When I'm at home, I look at the flowers in the garden. When I'm staying at a hotel, I look at the surrounding buildings and all their variety. When I'm in the country, I take in the sheer abundance and beauty of nature. Wherever I am, there is always something interesting to draw my attention. Each time I look out the window, I appreciate that the universe does not revolve around me, it includes me. Immersed in wonder and awe, the first step in my morning ritual reminds me that the world is much greater than my life and concerns. My mother grew up in Maine and often reflects on the beauty of nature. She once said to me, "Think of the beauty of a maple tree. The same force that makes the sap run up from its roots to its trunk against gravity is the same force that lives within you." She made her point by gently poking me in the stomach and saying, "It's right there inside of you. Connect to it." My awe meditation reminds me every morning of the miracles with which I am connected. The psychologists Jonathan Haidt and Dr. Keltner wrote about awe in Christopher Peterson and Martin Seligman's book, Character, Strengths, and Virtues. People consistently report that experiences of awe and elevation have profound outcomes, motivating self-improvement, personal change, altruistic intentions and actions, and the devotion to others in the larger community. The second step of my morning ritual focuses on gratitude. I give thanks in prayer for everything that I'm grateful for. Philosophers and religious teachers have taught us for thousands of years to begin our day by feeling and expressing gratitude for everything and everyone in our lives. My thanks include being grateful for a new day, a good night's sleep, my health, my family, my close friends, my key supporters in business, and for the important opportunities I have professionally and personally. Wanting to keep these images fresh in my mind, I visualize the people and things that I'm most grateful for to have in my life. Following my gratitude prayer, I continue to pray for direction, fulfillment, and peace. I reinforce the 3 promises in my life by including them in my prayers. And so I say every day, thank you for this most fulfilling day. I will find joy. I will do what I love. I will make a difference. Thank you for helping me fulfill my 3 promises today. I want to share with you and there's more in the chapter about awe and gratitude, but I mentioned that my mom really taught me about the power of gratitude and connecting to it, and that it's deep inside of you. And I'm really honored that tonight with me is my mom and my dad. And my mom and dad are right there. So I'm so grateful to have them with me this evening, but every day. They're just wonderful, wonderful people. So this is one strategy of awe, meditation, and gratitude, to be able to take in your experience in the morning in some meaningful way, in a way that you design, however it is that you might design. I want to tell you another quick story about finding joy. A number of years ago, and I shouldn't admit this because I write about happiness, and I write about this in the book in the 2nd chapter. I was in my office in Delray Beach. Anyone been up to Delray Beach? Nice place, good restaurants, and fun beach and so forth. Well, I was in my office, and I wasn't. This is the part that I'm not supposed to admit, but I wasn't having a very good day. All right, so I'm going to admit it. So here's a question that I ask you: when you are not having such a great day, in which direction typically do your eyes go? Let me hear it. Down. They go down. They go down. Yeah, they typically go down. Right. So you look down, and so that's what I was doing. I was in my office, and I was looking down at the floor, and then all of a sudden, I started laughing because I looked down and I saw that there was a purple dinosaur sticker on my left shoe. There was a white fluffy unicorn on the other shoe, and Dora the Explorer was on the other shoe. 3 stickers on my shoe. And I started laughing because I realized that my 2- and 3-year-old little girls at the time had slipped those stickers on my shoes. And just thinking of them slipping it on my shoes while I was kissing my wife goodbye in the morning made me laugh, thinking that they were getting away with it. But then I really started laughing because I looked at the time and it was 11:15 a.m. and I thought, where had I been all morning with Dora, a unicorn, and Barney stuck on my shoes? And it was at that moment that all of a sudden I'm laughing, I look up, I'm by myself, but you're still laughing, smiling, and it's at that moment that all of a sudden I go, I feel pretty good. And so the question is, in which direction do your eyes go when you're feeling pretty good? They go up. And so all of a sudden I was feeling good, and I realized at that moment, something that I write about in the book, chapter 2, that the stickers that were on my shoe were what I call a positive trigger. We all have negative triggers, things that frustrate us and upset us, but the stickers on my shoe are a positive trigger. Just thinking of my girls, the stickers were a trigger for me to think about my girls, which ultimately triggered happiness as a result. And so just like that, my mood went from a bad mood to a good mood. Does that make sense? And so, just literally, do it with me. Give me a little snap. Let's see if we've got our beat. 1, 2, 3. Hey, that's pretty good. Steve, not bad. We can read books and snap our fingers. So it was pretty interesting to me. And the research, and I go through this in the book, the research, particularly by Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina, has shown that when we invoke our positive emotions, we activate our positive emotions, we increase our intuition, we increase our resilience to adversity, and it widens our attention, it makes us more kind, it makes us more generous. And so anything that we can do, back to finding what are those positive triggers. In fact, just for fun, I'm going to do this. I'm going to ask you to turn to the person next to you or move just a little bit and share 1 or 2 things that bring a smile to your face, make you feel good, make you feel happy, make you laugh. On the count of 3, I want you to find someone to do that with. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Just another 30 seconds. All right. 10 seconds. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blast off. Yeah, right. There you go. Very good. Well, say thank you to your partner. Say thank you to your partner for sharing. Let me just ask you, just for fun, so you guys had a chance to share. Give me a couple examples from each side of positive triggers for you that you shared with each other.
Grandchildren.
Yeah, well, we'll start in the very back.
With my friends.
Being together with your friends is a positive trigger. Even just getting together with them, talking to them, calling them, anything of that nature.
Hanging out and being friends.
Hanging out and being friends, particularly at Books and Books.
Particularly at Books and Books.
Right, absolutely. And Coral Gables right here. That's great, awesome, and it's lovely to see you too. Thank you for coming. And then I heard we'll go this way and go around. Yes.
Grandchildren.
Grandchildren. Ah, that's a good answer. The grandchildren, just being with your
Pure
grandchildren,
joy.
just pure joy. Isn't it the great? In fact, this morning,
They're better than the children.
better than children. Yeah, I've heard that, right? I've heard that. My parents love my children as well. Actually, it's interesting. This morning, I gave a speech to grandparents at a school today. 300 grandparents. It was really very meaningful, very meaningful. So grandchildren, great. How about over on this side? What'd you guys share?
Our children.
Our children.
Younger kids, a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Wow!
So,
Congratulations.
a lot of chaos, but a lot of joy as well. A lot of laughing, a lot of activity. So.
Oh, I can see. Not everyone can see your face, but she's lit up, talking about her children, which is just a beautiful thing, right? So you wouldn't be the person in the front row saying, "I just want my kids to be quiet." In this case, well, maybe still.
Yeah, definitely need the escape. That's why I'm here by myself.
Yeah, right. Good for you. That's awesome. It's a great place to be, but you're not fully alone because we get to be with you. That's great. And how about our friends in the farther back? What did you guys?
For me, about your mother and father, I think first of all, to be alive the next day, you have a big forgetting, right? Yes. And it starts from the next thing you say. Look outside and you see this wonderful world.
Wow.
And then you realize how fortunate you
Wow.
are. Another thing that people don't understand, particularly if you live in America, how fortunate you are to be in this country.
Wow.
The one country in the whole world that allows society such as ours to be able to speak to one another and to use the vision we have to prosper.
Wow.
It's just a big heavy. You go from there.
Wow.
You get up from there and start talking.
Yeah.
You do the talking, but you do a darn good job.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And it's the little things. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Not anywhere in particular. The gentleman before you was talking on a higher spectrum, like saving the world.
Yeah.
So I think you better start with the little things,
Right.
the ones that touch you every day.
Yeah.
I'll shut up.
No, that's awesome. First of all, you have a great voice, so you'd be fun to have up here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I hope everyone heard, but that the essence is just being, first of all, happy to be alive. It's easy to take that for granted, but there's so many reminders. Now I'm 49 years old. I have too many reminders now of the fact that I'm so lucky to be alive and to have generally good health. And then to be able, as we said, to look out this gentleman's name. What's your first name?
My name is Greg.
Greg?
I wonder if I'm the same age as your parents. Sounds like I am.
Well, he must be very young.
Not his mother.
Yeah. Good answer. That is awesome.
What's your father? How old is he?
Awesome. Dad is 84.
My age, 1930.
Yeah, right.
So am I.
Wow. Is it awesome? Yeah, give him a hand. That's right. 84. That's awesome. And I love the answer, by the way, talking about joy, was in the back where it said my father's age, now my mother's age. So that is one of the things that we, and the fact that we're in this great country and that we have so many, there's so many blessings about being here.
May I say one thing?
Please.
A little gentleman, maybe most of us have heard of, a very poor man by the name of Buffett. That's the one, and he was born in 1930. So one thing he realized opportunity that he was given because of this kind of this sacrifice.
Right.
Bunker Hill off during the day. Unbelievable. To make our lives better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
No, that's
what we
awesome.
get for a man that has a few bucks.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for Gray. Thank you for sharing. Really awesome. Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to add one because I spoke with your delightful mother,
Oh,
who, of course, we couldn't get past the grandchildren.
Yeah.
Because, no, between both of us, but she's, every time the doorbell rings, it's a trigger for joy with her because she's in a neighborhood where the doorbell doesn't ring that much and she knows it's going to be the grandkids.
Wow.
So that was really nice to hear what happens. But on the other hand, other than my grandkids, what I said to her was that I'm really happy that she is one of the facilitators of gratitude in the world because she gave that to you. She passed it down, so she's putting good energy out into the world.
Oh, isn't that nice? Thank you. And you're saying that let me take that as a transition to, I want to jump to the third promise because just what you said there, you're making a difference. And people, we often don't recognize the opportunity to make a difference. What you've just said, my mom will remember this, what you said for a long time. I'll remember what you just said for a long time. And it's these micro moments, back to Gray's point, these micro moments that we don't invest enough belief in to say that they really do matter in our lives. That when we, every single day, and this is really the whole essence of the book, which I make the claim, and I have you do, there's a 3-day challenge that I outline and I set up for you at the back of the book of how to fulfill the 3 promises on a daily basis for 3 days. Test it out yourself. Try it yourself. And at the end of 3 days, what I've found in the tests that I've run with different organizations at FAU, with corporations, is that more than 90% of participants within 3 days increase their level of fulfillment just by doing the 3 promises for 3 days, deciding what works for them, not what I tell them works for them. But it's these micro moments, these couple minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be saving the world, as Gray was saying before, to get to a place of fulfillment, to make a difference. Here's a story that I want to share with you. We just honored my mom. I'm going to honor my father, who is with us this evening too. When I was a kid, we used to drive on our vacations, most of our vacations. You remember as a child driving to anyone of you drove to vacations and stuff? Well, in my family, we would pack the trunk of our car with all the luggage, and that was my dad's job. And we called my dad Big Lou. Big Lou was about 6'3", and so Big Lou he'd go into the house, and like a scientist, he had like the scientific approach to how he's going to get all these bags in the trunk. So he would go in, and this is the first, this story that I'm telling is in the first chapter in section 3 of the book, or the third promise. But he'd go in the house, and he'd grab all the luggage, and he'd take them, and he'd take it out to the trunk, in the back of the trunk, and he'd go out, he'd grab it, he'd stage it, and he'd grab it, and he'd stage it. He'd get them all backed up right by the trunk, and then he'd kind of look it over, and then start in on the bags, sizing them up as to which bag goes in which place. So he's putting one there and one there and one there. And finally, this particular day, though, he can't find space in the trunk for one last bag. Can't find the space. So what does he do? He does the typical big man thing. He steps back, he crosses his arms, and he starts staring down the trunk. Just staring down that trunk, seeing if he could find that space that just isn't showing up. Now, I'm a little guy, and I just, for whatever reason, it came over me. I just looked up at my dad, looked up at Big Lou, and I saw that he was staring. And I looked down at the bags, and I saw that they weren't moving. So I thought to myself, I must be able to do something. So I stepped forward, I looked in the trunk, I moved a bag to the left, I moved a bag to the right, I moved this one back just a little bit. I reached down, I grabbed that last bag, and boink, the bag slipped right into place. It was like, getting the last move on the Rubik's Cube. And so I was so excited. I looked up at Big Lou, and Big Lou looked down at me, and he said, "David, you're a good packer." I was 9 years old when my dad told me that, and I'm 49, and I'm still talking about it. See, what we've learned in the research, that when you call out the strength in someone, the research by Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, Christopher Peterson, the late Christopher Peterson at the University of Michigan, you call out the strength in someone, you bring it to life. When you call out what someone does well, you amplify it. And that's what my dad did all those years ago. But what he did was he did more than that. He made sure to tell that as a story. His son, the good packer, and told that whole story about how I found space in the trunk for that last bag. But he did more than that. He made sure that I could hear him telling that story. So I grew up with knowing that my dad was acknowledging me. So we know from the research in positive psychology, when Steve introduced me, that the research in positive psychology, that when leaders acknowledge their employees and their best strengths, it increases their performance. And we know from the research that when parents recognize the strengths of their children, it increases their well-being and happiness in life and success. And that's what my father did for me. But there's another part of the story I have to share with you. A number of years ago, when you were growing up, do you remember Curious George? The little book, Curious George. And then there was a movie that came out. It was a remake. It was Will Ferrell was the voice of Curious George. And so my girls were little at the time, and they had these big Curious George dolls, these really big dolls. And I thought it'd be really cool if I could get them. So I went to a Toys R Us to buy them, and I pulled into the parking lot, pulled into a spot, got out, and started walking down the aisle between the cars to go to the store. And as I was walking in, I saw a boy, his mother, and his grandmother trying to squeeze a bicycle into the family car. And I stopped and offered to help. Why? Because I'm a good packer. So I stopped and offered to help, and the two of us, the little boy and I, are sitting there going back and forth, trying to get the bike in this way or in that way, trying every which way to get that bike in the car. And all of a sudden I could just hear just faintly that the mother was calling the boy's father to say they might not be able to bring the bike home because it might not fit in the trunk. But when I heard that, I waved her off. I said, no, I need more time. Why? Because I'm a good packer. So I go back in, and I'm working with this boy trying to get the bike in the car for about maybe 2 more minutes, trying this way and that way and this way, where finally I just looked at it and I said, we might not be able to get this bike in the car. So, I might have really met my match. So I stepped back, did what my dad, Big Lou, did, crossed my arms, and I looked up at the mother and said, you might need to buy a bigger car. Well, the little boy must have seen my face, because he looked up at me and he said, wait. So I waited, and the boy was much more nimble than I was. He reached into that trunk, got really far into it, as far into it as he could, grabbed that front tire, moved it just a little bit, and he looks back at me and he says, push. So I pushed, and the bike slipped right into place. I look over at that little boy, and he lights up with pride. I walk over to him, I put my hand on his shoulder, and I say, you're a good packer. And that's the power in the instant that my father saw me all those years ago do something that he thought was special, and he then took the time to mention it and then make something of it, has carried forward all these years to an opportunity for me to be in a parking lot with someone I didn't know, to make an opportunity to recognize someone special like that. And what we find in the third promise, and I have many strategies, 20 strategies or so, just in that promise alone, that there's so many ways that we can make a difference that don't require us going away for a whole week and volunteering somewhere, but that just by the way we approach our day, the way we connect with our family, the way we connect with our friends, the way we connect with the people we work with, we can make a difference in so very many ways. And so that's really the essence of the three promises. The last thing that I wanted to share with you, how it connects to another book that I wrote called The Law of the Garbage Truck, is that I believe that we operate in two energy fields, two energy cycles, and we operate in one or the other each day and throughout the day. The first is what I call the promise cycle, and I write about that in the book, near the end of the book. The promise cycle is a place where we really want to be, where we're finding joy, and we're sharing joy, and we're activating joy. One of the beautiful things about finding joy is also understanding how to activate it in other people. The more we know the positive triggers, for example, from the first section of the book, the more we know about the positive triggers of the people we love and care about, the more we can activate them, rather than only knowing what bothers them, but knows what really they love about things, and then how to activate them. So the promise cycle is finding joy every day and doing what we can to put ourselves in that place, so that when we come home and we see our children, we're finding joy. When we're getting up in the morning, or when we're coming to work in the first of the day, coming in with a joyful feeling, and making a conscious effort. And then finding a way to do what we love in some way every day, making sure that we're contributing to our businesses or our hobbies in a way that brings out what we love to do. And then making a difference in finding ways of consciously helping other people. And so throughout that day, it's a virtuous cycle. But what happens is, and this is what I write about in Law of the Garbage Truck, which I mentioned about navigating negativity, is that when we get into rumors and gossip and excessive criticism and frustration and anger and disappointment, that's when we find ourselves in what I call the garbage cycle. And the garbage cycle also attracts people into it. And that's where we start baiting people into negative conversations and excessive criticism and complaining and so forth, as opposed to encouraging them to find joy in doing what you love and make a difference. So to the degree that we can avoid the garbage cycle, or when we get into it, step out of the rumors, gossip, frustration, and move into finding joy, doing what we love, make a difference, we find that we create the fulfillment we're looking for, and ultimately the happiness that we're looking for. I'll close with one last little story, also in the book. How many of you have heard of like a museum of butterflies? Have you ever been to a museum of butterflies? Okay, well, my daughters, years ago, when we moved from California to Florida, we wanted to go to Key West. How many have been to Key West? Okay, so we wanted to go to Key West. We had heard about it, with all these things that we wanted to do, like Hemingway's house, Southernmost Point, and so forth. Well, our daughters, for some reason, thought that they wanted to go. They said they wanted to go to a museum of butterflies. And we had never heard of that before. That's why I asked if you had heard of a museum of butterflies. We'd never heard of that. But sure enough, my wife and I looked at the map, and there was this museum of butterflies in Key West on Duval Street. So my wife and I said, you know what, the girls want to go. You know, let's go with our girls and head down there. So we did, and when we got there, I paid, and then they directed us to the center of the museum, and there was a special pressurized entrance where I walked into that entrance, and it's one of those where you walk in, all of a sudden, your hair blows back because of the pressure and the wind. And the reason why is because there were thousands and thousands of multicolored butterflies all flapping their wings inside of this sanctuary. And it was absolutely beautiful. I was blown away by all these beautiful butterflies. And I looked over to see what my girls were doing, and I could tell they were enjoying themselves because they were putting their arms out and putting their arms out this way, trying to see if the butterflies would land on them. And I'm a curious guy, so I asked the museum tour guide who was walking around with us, how long do butterflies live? I was just curious because, you know, beautiful. And she said, without hesitation, about 10 days. 10 days. And I said, 10 days? I'm thinking to myself, 10 days? What can you do in 10 days? And, you know, right? Yeah, so what can you do in 10 days? Well, one trip to Books and Books, and, you know, that's one day right there. So what can you do in 10 days? So like a good tourist, I blurted it out and yelled, called it out. You know, so what do butterflies do in 10 days? She stopped, museum tour guide stopped, turned, looked at me and said, they make the world a more beautiful place. I went, oh. I didn't expect to hear that in a museum of butterflies. But when we find joy every day, when we do what we love, when we make a difference in the lives of other people, we make the world a more beautiful place. And I thank you so much for coming out to Books and Books this evening and joining us. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Can I ask you, what do you,
Please.
your profession, you're a consultant, an author, what do you do?
Yeah, the three principal things that I do now at this point in my career, I speak to organizations. I work with corporations and organizations, associations, and help them either with leadership development or professional development or ultimately just personal performance. How is it that we can increase our performance? And what I've found in my research over the years is that if you can activate your fulfillment on the job, you will do better. You'll be more satisfied, but you'll also do better. So I do that type of work, and then I do consulting that as an extension of that. I also write. So I've the Three Promises, of course, is my second book. The first one is The Law of the Garbage Truck, which, just to make mention, the Law of the Garbage Truck is in 13 languages and still expanding because of the need to navigate negativity. The third thing, in addition to writing, is I'm an executive coach. So I work with particularly business leaders who want greater performance for themselves and also for others. I work with them on a one-on-one basis and some team development as well. So that's what, but I come from a business background, and then my academic background is in positive psychology.
Background is what? You say you come from a business background.
I worked for Yahoo. I was the first director of customer service for the organization, and then the first director of learning and development for them. I worked for MasterCard, and I was in a leadership position there as well, administrating our leadership programs, our recognition programs, and so forth. So I have that. But then what I really love, and Steve mentioned in the beginning, is positive psychology. I went back to graduate school a number of years ago, actually in the first master's program in the world in the field of positive psychology, which essentially is traditional psychology has focused on what's wrong with people and how do we fix it, which is okay, it's important. Like, do you have depression, anxiety, you've got to deal with that. And so medications and therapies have come as a result. But positive psychology just said, look, we've got a lot there. How can we put some energy and emphasis on what's right with people and how do we amplify it? So how can we study what makes people happy, what makes people successful? And that's the study of positive psychology. So I joined the first master's program at the University of Pennsylvania in 2005, and then I co-founded the International Positive Psychology Association, which is really to promote and encourage researchers and practitioners to share knowledge and information so that we can ultimately help the world, focus on its strengths and bring out more of them. Yeah.
Do you find part of this being genetic? You see certain people in the world, like, I must admit, like I see a lot of times Latins, no matter even what their situation is, certain Latin American countries, they're just happier.
Yeah.
And then even, the more in Western industrial, is positive psychology dealing with any of that, or usually not?
Yeah, there's some countries have, and as you're saying, the Latin American countries, some of them have a higher level of overall happiness. Mm-hmm. I particularly focus on an individual, right. And on the individual level, what we know is that there is a genetic component to happiness. So mom and dad gave me something, right. And that starts me off with a certain level of predisposition to happiness. And so just as we know some people who are just, it doesn't matter what they're doing, they're always like this. They're just all the time, I'm having a tough day and they're still smiling, and then of course there are, those of us who have to work on it a little bit more. But what we found, Sonia Lubomirsky is a researcher at the University of California, Riverside, and she kind of talks about it as a happiness pie, that 40% of our 40 to 50% of our happiness there's sort of a genetic set point, which is based on our genetics. 10% are circumstances, so the house we live in, the town we live in, the health we have impacts our happiness. And then about 40% is left to the choices we make. So, for example, again, the Three Promises. You can just kind of cruise through your day, or you can make a choice and say, I'm going to take responsibility for my life and I want to create fulfillment. I want to activate my 3 promises every day. I'm going to find joy. I'm going to do what I love. I'm going to make a difference. So, yeah, it's a good question. Good question.
What about the remaining 10%?
What's that?
You have 10%, I think, that you missed out.
Oh, right. I said 40 to 50 on genetics. So,
40 to 50.
yeah, good point. You're good with math. No, it's a good point. And then, of course, these numbers aren't exact, but they give you a pretty good idea. Yeah, you had a question.
In the same way that, the children's developmental stages are, they soak everything up and they can be molded into certain behaviors or whatever. So have you seen any evidence that affects, that shows like how quickly or slowly people of different ages would respond to, let's say for instance using strategies or, and really focusing on positivity? Is it harder the older you get?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, the general consensus is it's harder for us to change as we get older because we get set in our ways, and we also have more fixed responsibilities, so it feels like we don't have as much maneuverability. But my experience, though, with the 3 promises, because I've worked with kids with the 3 promises of pretty much of all ages, that once people accept the fact that they can decide what are the things that bring them joy every day, whatever their age, and I'll do this with my children, and I'll ask them, and literally, like if we were spent more time, I would actually ask you to come up with a list of all the little things that bring you joy, and you'll come up with a lot of things, and our lists won't be exact. Some of them will be the same, but some won't. That no matter what that age, they're doing it with. Today, it was with grandparents we were talking about, and I think probably people were in their 70s mostly, and we did some exercises around this, and everyone always finds that they know more about themselves than they give themselves credit for, and then they write down all these things that give them joy. And then the same thing about what is it that they love to do, the type of ways that they express their strengths through their work or their hobbies, and then how they like to contribute to other people, the things that they like to do to make people happier. And I've found that no matter what the age group is the key is just showing that it's possible and that you have to do it. The key, and that's where the latter part of the book is the 3-day challenge, is to get people of all ages, just do it. You've heard me talk about it, but now for 3 days, actually write down one thing that you're going to do to find joy, do what you love, make a difference. Write those 3 things down, and then do them. And or if new opportunities come up to do them, that's great too. You write those all down. You do that for 3 days, and everybody shows the malleability, back to your question, that they can change. And the good news is you get to reset every day. So one day is a little harder. Okay, well, I wake up tomorrow. What joy am I planning? What am I going to do to make a difference, and so forth.
Well, we have time for one more question.
Okay. Now, I wanted to thank you again, by the way, for only asking that my father's age be revealed, not my mom's. That was particularly creative.
So you were kind of laughing about admitting that you weren't having a good day, that the sticker trigger story. But I wasn't sure how serious you were. I mean, you're supposed to be the expert on fulfillment. I was just curious why you would think that would be a bad thing to admit, because I think we do a great disservice to make people believe that you figure this out and you're good to go.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. The answer is I was having fun, but the real answer is no. I'm just like anybody else. I have my moments that are difficult and challenging, and it wasn't just 6 years ago in an office that I was having a bad day. And I think, the older I get, and this is really some of the motivation for me behind writing this book, is that life is challenging. It can be tough. People pass away, people get sick, we lose our jobs, we don't have the jobs that we want. So we get thrown curves, and they're going to take us and make us not feel that great. So the question then is, what I'm finding the more, and really in my writing, and when you'll see in the book, is I'm actually pretty self-effacing and sharing the things that upset me and have disappointments in my life and where I wanted to hide and get away from it. So my little bit of humor really wasn't consistent with the message of the book. I think that what I find is the more open we are with people about the challenges that we have and our commitment to overcoming them, the more happy we are and the more successful we are in meeting those challenges. So, yeah, it's a good question. Does that answer? Did that answer?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just thinking how that relates to, I was studying with Lama Bigmar, who's a monk in Harvard Square, and he was talking about getting to this level where you can love everyone, even your enemy, right?
Right.
And so somebody actually raised their hand and like, come on, do you really do that? Like, love your enemy? And he always took a deep breath before he answered. Then he laughed, and he's like, no. And he said, what I found is not that I do these things all the time that I'm teaching y'all, but that when I do them, life goes better.
Right.
And that's what I'm sort of thinking
Well,
with
that's
the
a
three
goal.
promises. Not that you'll do it every day, but that any day you're feeling stuck or that it is a hard day, if you'll do these things, it'll get better.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's two ways I look at it. One is your days will get better if you activate the three promises, and the strategies in the book. There are so many to help people see just what's possible, but also, prophylactically, in advance of the days ahead, is how am I going to think? Like, one of the things that I do every morning, and I talk about it here, but is set my intention, and I actually put it on Facebook. I'll say, my intention today, because I had a speech this morning too, I said, my intention in speaking today is to be, I said, warm-hearted, passionate, I think I said, and to be warm-hearted, passionate, and to have fun, and to go with that intention. And here's just the last thing we'll leave, because we could stay here, Steve, at Books and Books forever, is that right before we came here to pick up Mom and Dad, the water main of their house broke. So we live about an hour and 45 minutes up north, and we needed to get going. But the water was flowing. And so at that moment, it's challenging. You're dealing with the reality of life happens. And so we had to contend with that. But as you can see, we had to take some deep breaths, and hope that my navigation system would work, and talk to Steve, who was so awesome, to give us a couple minutes at the beginning. Books and Books just makes it so easy to be here. That's like a life test, and then to be able to, say, okay, that happened, and everything's going to work out, and let's find some joy. Let's enjoy this evening, and here we are.
Well, I hope Do What You Love includes being a plumber.
Yeah, good answer. I'm going to take you on the road with me. You're awesome. That's really great. What's your first name?
Bob.
Bob, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much again. I appreciate it. Oh, Steve, thank you.
I think we've all experienced just a bit of joy with having David here this evening. Of course, his book, The Three Promises, is for sale at the counter. If you're watching online, give us a call. We'll get one signed and sold for you. And also, The Law of the Garbage Truck is also on sale. David will sign them both for you right here. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You bet.